Hello, Simon Mayo. Welcome to the Cambridge
hello,
Film.
Jenny Nelson.
I've got a few questions for our lovely youth lab who are interested in learning about reviewing films, and part of film reviewing is just, well, as you know, just talking about film, but talking to directors and actors and interviewing them. And I would love to know from you, particularly with your Five Live hat on, how do you prepare for an interview with a big name director or actor? Or they don't need to be big name, actually. How do you generally prepare? Do you have a sort of process?
Yeah, well, I mean, the key thing in any interview is to do your prep. And so there are only two rules to any interview. One is do your homework, and the other is listen to what the person you're talking to is saying. They're the only two rules. So that applies to interviewing a director or an actor. So first of all, see the movie, don't skimp, because they'll know, they'll know if you haven't. So see the film, do as much research as you can find, read the reviews, read some interviews. It's so easy to find interviews now, which they've done in the past. So you're as ginned up as possible. You know the kind of direction you'd like the interview to go in. You won't have very long, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, tops probably, but be prepared to be flexible. So I would have 6 or 7 points that I would like to get to. But if the director wants to take it in another direction, then be prepared to go with that. So I would say, do your preparation, write the notes. Directors are easier, I think, than actors, because actors are often miserable about doing promo. They often aren't very good at doing promo. They're sometimes doing promo for films that they realize aren't very good, but they have to do it because they've signed a contract. So often you'll get a grumpy actor, and that can be a bit of a challenge. So then you just have to roll with it a bit and see how see what they want to talk about and see how reluctant they are, and then maybe have a few questions in your back pocket that you think they might like talking about. Directors are more straightforward because it's their gig, it's their project. They have invested their time and their name is on this movie. So if you say, so obviously you start off by, every time you say, hello, welcome, thanks for joining us, tell us what your film's about. And you can glean an awful lot from that. And if it's the director you're talking to, that might be half the interview time gone, because they'll be so passionate to tell you about the story, where did the story come from, and so on. So I would say normally directors are easier. Actors can be a little bit temperamental, but and they'll be particularly temperamental if they sense that you haven't done your work. But if they feel as though they're talking to someone who's appreciated what they've done, then you might get something out of it. I would think. But right. in general, just try and talk to Tom Hanks, because if you can talk to Tom Hanks, you're going to be fine. Everything is going to be fine. Anyone else apart from Tom Hanks is slightly more difficult.
Right. And when it comes to talking about film, especially this maybe slightly more cerebral films, you've said before, and you've said in interviews, that your role at Witainment is to kind of not keep Kermode on track, but sort of make sure that some of but for some of the more art house films, to kind of make them accessible, would you say?
I haven't got a clue what he's talking about a lot of the time. So it was Johnny Vaughan who came up to us at some dinner somewhere, and he said to me, Simon, your role is a choric role. And I said, thank you, Johnny. I don't know what that means. And he said, in Greek theatre, the role of the chorus is to tell the audience what's going on. So my job is, so Mark will often say, that guy who does Mexican horror from the 1920s. And I'll go, no. Whenever he says, that Swedish constructivist who did that black and white, no, the answer is always no. And on behalf of the audience, no, they haven't heard of it either. So yeah, I'm an interpreter / interrupter to try and keep him on the straight and narrow, and not to go too artsy, to BBC4, and to keep it mainstream so that people have got the first idea what he's talking about.
What do you think is the secret to the success of Wittertainment?
Well, Mark and I would differ about this. I would say it's not about film. That's the secret. Nobody would commission now a 2-hour program about full of film reviews. Nobody does that. No one gets their information about film off the radio. It just doesn't happen. To be honest, they don't get it off the television either. So what it manages to be is, yes, it's about film. And if you do want to know about the film releases, hear a director or a producer or an actor interviewed, then we'll do that. But it's actually about life itself. You know, that's it in the same way that Top Gear it's possible to enjoy Top Gear without driving or having any intention of ever driving or buying a car, because it's entertainment. So Mark and I talk about movies in a way that if you have, I mean, we had a feature once, you know, what's the longest you've been since you went to the cinema? So I haven't been to the cinema for like 30 years, but they still listen to the program. And because we've been doing it a long time, it's a cross-generational thing. So you can actually listen to it with your parents or your children or your grandchildren or whatever. And so people feel as though they have some kind of attachment to it. So it manages, we're still there because it's about movies, but it's more about life.
Just one more question. I was wondering, because at this time of us chatting, we're getting to the end of 2020. And one of the interviews that you told me about doing pre-COVID, it was quite a while ago actually, but I remember you saying how much you'd enjoyed it, was with Chadwick Boseman. I was just wondering if you could just tell the Youth Lab why it was quite a significant, well, not significant, but why it was an interview you particularly enjoyed doing.
Yeah. Well, I'd never interviewed Chadwick Boseman before, and he would never have been offered, I don't think, for Black Panther, because it was such a big movie, and I don't think we got offered him anyway. But he got involved with this film. Was it 21 Bridges? I forget now. I've forgotten how many bridges there were. Anyway, he'd been involved, and he was a producer, and he was really part of this film. So he was passionate about the film. And he was tired and exhausted at the start of the interview, which we did in a very tiny kind of cubicle at the BBC. And so to start with, he's a little bit reticent, but I'd seen the movie and I'd enjoyed the movie, and I'd read that he'd done theatre in the UK. So I thought, fine, I didn't know he had a UK history, certainly didn't know he had theatre history here. That's a good starting point. So we know what we're talking about. And then it was all going fine. And here's the thing, which I could add into your conversation about how do you interview actors particularly. If there's something controversial, don't bring it up at the beginning. Wait to the end. So these are often timed interviews. So you have a 15-minute chunk, and after the 15 minutes, that's it. Either you leave, or in this case, he leaves to go to another part of the BBC. So just about a day before this interview, Martin Scorsese had criticized the Marvel films for not being proper films. And I'm paraphrasing. And I brought this up with about a minute to go. So it's like 14 minutes on the clock, thinking if he walks out, we've still got a full interview. And I said to him, I'm sure lots of people have asked you this, but what did you think when you heard about Martin Scorsese? Anyway, we get probably, and you can find this on YouTube or find this on BBC Sounds, probably the best answer to any question that I've ever had in any of the film interviews. He gives the most learned, impassioned, respectful to Scorsese, and yet really hard-hitting answer, which by the end, he's basically saying, you don't get it. And that might be partly to do with the fact that you've got a movie that you're promoting, but also maybe it's an age thing. And I mean, again, I paraphrase, but you have to, it's a majestic answer because, excuse me, because he manages to combine respect for the genius of Martin Scorsese with a raw anger about the fact that his movie has been criticized. And so I just think when he'd finished this answer, and we're now on 17 minutes, 18 minutes, but because it's the star who's talking, the PR isn't winding up because I've finished. I've done it's him. It's over to him, and he's so passionate and in answering this question. And at the end, I just said, "Wakanda forever," and he went, "Wakanda forever," and it was just fantastic. And then he got up and left. and we had a chat about this and that. Anyway, so he was remarkable. We played some of it out when he died, again, just to remember quite how fantastic the interview was, and what a great actor, and what a terrible loss.
Lovely. Well, Simon, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to the Cambridge Film Trust.
Thank you. You can buy me a Diet Coke one day.
I will, and a cinnamon bun.
Oh, how about that?